Being the bridge. That's the key word.
Hmm.
I've taken pride over my music career and now in sports. I'm bilingual. I'm a switch hitter. They say switch hitter. I'm a switch speaker. I do both. And being that bridge for years has been my thing, and God has blessed me with the ability to do that.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Stay Tranquilo Sports. Today, we are joined by a broadcast legend, Rickie Ricardo, one of the announcer for the Spanish broadcast for the Yankees, for the Philadelphia Eagles, and one of the only people that I've ever seen announce a home run like this. Se va, se fue, one of the most iconic callings of a home run in Yankee Stadium. Rickie Ricardo, thanks so much for taking the time to be here today.
It's my pleasure. Estoy tranquilo.
Todo
Pero bien
tranquilo, right?
tranquilo.
As you said, tranquilo y tropical, right? That's always the energy
Tranquilo
that we try to
tropical.
bring.
Yeah, it's a midsummer, July, the All-Star, the baseball's at its best, trade deadline coming up, lots going on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely a lot to cover today, right? There's a lot going on. We just had the home run derby yesterday, which was a great home run derby. A little bit of controversy as to how people perceived it there at the end. But in my opinion, as a baseball fan, I thought it was great. But there's a lot going on, right? You got the midway point of the season. A lot of teams kind of like in the mix. Doesn't seem to be a true heavy favorite. So definitely want to get your perspective on that. Then we're, a month away from football, basically, which is crazy to even say. So definitely want to talk Eagles, want to talk NFL with you. There was a big trade in Philly with A.J. Brown in the offseason, so want to get your perspective on that. And then, of course, the World Cup's going on, right? We're here, Final Four teams, semifinals. We got Spain playing today against France, and then you got Argentina playing tomorrow, which that's a big game as well. So just a lot going on. So, Rickie, let's jump right into it. Let's talk some baseball, right? You've been covering the Yankees all season for multiple years now, but I want to get your perspective on this Yankees team, right? They came out hot. They kind of cooled down a little bit in the last month, but they're starting to find a little bit of their stride again here right before the All-Star break. Give me your thoughts on what this Yankees team has done up to this point, and kind of what you think they look like going into the second half of this year.
Well, as you mentioned, it's been a roller coaster ride for the Yankees. They had their annual, it seems like it's every year, their quote unquote
Yes.
June swoon.
Yep.
And everything started to get a little bit shaky after the major injury, obviously, to Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
It's going to catch up to you sooner or later when you have guys like Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, and Trent Grisham was out of the lineup for a couple of weeks. Max Fried, one of the top
Mm-hmm.
lefties in all of baseball, he's been on the IL now for many, many weeks. When you have guys of that caliber out of your lineup consistently over the course of a month, month and a half, going on 2 months coming up, it eventually is going to catch up to you. Bench players do a great job, but they're bench players for a reason. They're
Right.
not starters. So eventually it catches up to you. I think Aaron Boone has been dealt a difficult set of cards to play with here. Now, having said that, the American League, number one, I think is very weak. I think the
Mm-hmm.
National League, at least on the surface, because things tend to even themselves out in the long run.
Right.
But in the interim, the American League with the Tampa Bay Rays and the Yankees battling it out in the American League East, there was a point where the Rays were 6 up in the loss column on the Yankees. The Yankees had a walk-off win with an Aaron Judge walk-off home run. Everything turned. The Yankees were 2, 3 games up in the loss column in first place. I look at the loss column as my dad used to say, el perdido no se recupera. The loss, you can never get it back. Wisdom from my father, who's been gone for a while, but he was a big Yankee fan. And now, as things have gone back and forth again, now the Tampa Bay Rays here at the All-Star break are back in first place with a couple of game lead in the loss column over the Yankees. I think these two teams who just split a 4-game series at the
Right.
Trop in St. Pete, they're going to battle it all the way to the end. There's a big 4-game series in the Bronx, including a day-night doubleheader in the final week of the regular season.
Mm.
Tampa Bay, New York, clearly the two best teams in the American League. Now, a lot's going to change at the trade deadline.
Right.
Does Detroit does Detroit trade Tarek Skubal? Do the Cleveland Guardians make moves and try to, fortify their offense? Do they bring in a big bat? somebody in the West has got to. It's almost like nobody wants to win the
I know
West.
the West is a
Tech,
mess.
yeah, Texas Rangers, Seattle, Houston. Right now in the American League, you've got teams in the wild card positions that are under 500
Yeah,
or hovering
100%.
right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Yankees, to me, even with all the injuries that they've had, and they're going to get guys back, hopefully sooner than later. It remains to be seen how long Aaron Judge will be out, but Max Fried will be back. Hopefully, Giancarlo Stanton, who's always very good later on in the year,
Yes.
especially in postseason, he comes back. So some of these pieces, maybe the trade deadline for the Yankees will be getting their own players back, their
Right.
own injured players back to fortify the roster. But you're absolutely right. It's been a roller coaster ride up and down for the Yankees. I still think they're the best team in the American League. When you have starting pitching in a short
Mm-hmm.
series that you can throw in a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 7 series, when you can throw a Garrett Cole at someone, a Cam Schlittler, a Max Fried, a Carlos Rodon, and put some of the starters, the overflow of starting pitching into the bullpen like a Will Warren or a Ryan Matthews,
Mm-hmm.
I think they have the deepest pitching. I think they have the strongest pitching for a short series. So eventually, as the guys that are injured get healthy and come back, I think the Yankees, the cream will rise to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at that Yankees roster, especially that starting rotation, right? It's built for the postseason, and I think that's where, if you're a Yankee fan, like it's not a time to panic when you see these kind of June swoon type months, right? Where you know that this team is still very competitive. There's still a ton of talent. You talk about the injury with Aaron Judge, right? That to me is one of those things that it stinks, right? If you're a Yankee fan or even if you're a baseball fan, whenever you see the star players of a team go down, right, it just takes away from the best baseball that you could possibly watch. And with Aaron Judge in his career, he's a stud, right? He's one of the best players right now in the MLB, but he's been having these injury problems. And it's unfortunate, right, where sometimes the Yankees feel like they lose a little momentum throughout the season because you're losing your captain, right? And that to me is one of the biggest challenges with the Yankees. Can they stay healthy? That seems to be kind of like the common theme with the Yankees. And I actually curious, right? You brought up Aaron Boone. Is he someone that you think is kind of like on the hot seat, right? Obviously, the team's been really competitive, but they haven't been able to get over that hurdle, right? It always feels like it's kind of the same thing over and over again. I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think he'll succeed wherever he goes, and I think he should stay the Yankees coach, in my opinion. But I'm curious to get your thoughts and kind of what the fans' temperature is around that.
Well, Yankee fans, the Yankee universe, they want success and they want it
Yeah,
now. Okay,
yeah,
they're not very patient. They go into a 3-4 game losing streak and they want to fire the manager, they want to fire the general
right.
manager, they want to make major changes to
Yeah,
the roster. Jazz Chisholm, yeah, he's a guy that runs hot and cold with the
yeah.
fan base. So the fan base is fickle, to
Mm-hmm.
say the least. Overall, I think Aaron Boone
Mm-hmm.
has done a wonderful job as Yankees manager. He just won his 750th game
Wow.
on Saturday as Yankees manager, 751 on Sunday, putting him number 7 on the all-time list of great managers. And you're talking about the Joe Torres of the
Right.
world and the Yogi Berras of the world and the guys that go back into the 30s and 40s and the 50s and the Ralph Houcks of the world. So you're talking about some of the biggest names ever to manage baseball teams. Aaron Boone is now in that echelon, in that upper echelon, number 7 all time in wins, and there's plenty more wins where that came from, and hopefully more of those are this season to get him closer to 800 wins. We'll see. There's enough games to be able to do it, although they'd
Mm-hmm.
have to really reel off a big winning streak.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, I don't think he's on a hot seat. I think the organization is pleased with his managerial style. He's a perfect mix of analytics and gut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he doesn't completely go by analytics, but at the same time, he uses the numbers in a way where then his baseball acumen. Remember, he comes from a family where his grandfather played in Major League Baseball. His father, Bob Boone, was a great catcher for the Phillies, won a World Series, was also a very good manager, Bob Boone. His brother, Brett Boone, was a quality baseball player, too. So it's in his blood. there's no better baseball guy, as they say,
Hmm.
than Aaron Boone. So do I think he's on the hot seat? No. Do I think there's pressure for him to win?
Of
Absolutely.
course, yeah.
He's the manager of the Yankees. It's almost like being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys or,
Yeah.
or of the Philadelphia Eagles. There's always going to be pressure to win,
Hmm.
but hot seat, I wouldn't go that far yet. Now, if they don't make a long postseason run this year, especially in an American League where they may be the dominant team right now, and going into October, that might be another conversation down the road. But for right now, he is comfortably in place. The players respect him. They like him. They play hard for him. And like I mentioned, he cuts that thin line between being an analytics based manager and his gut, his baseball instincts,
Right.
while he's making decisions on the field.
No, absolutely, absolutely. You also brought up the dynamic of the AL right now, right? American League is doesn't seem to be as strong as the NL right now. To your point, I think a little bit of it is smoke and mirrors, right? I still think there's a lot of good teams in the AL. Yankees obviously being one of those, Tampa Bay Rays being another, right? But when you look at run differential, right, that's a statistic and an analytic that's kind of viewed across the league as to the legitimacy of a team, right? When you look at the AL, they currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 teams with a positive run differential, right? Whereas in the NL, you have about 9 teams in the positive run differential. How much do you look into that at this point of the season, right? Kind of weighing some of these teams. Are they good? Are they not? Are they legit? Are they just kind of cruising by and maybe getting lucky through the course of some of these wins? I remember the Marlins a couple years ago, right? Were kind of like, I think they were 5-6 games above 500, but they were, I think, negative 20 in run differential, right? So it almost like they were winning a lot of close games, maybe getting a break here, making a break there. But how much do you look into that when you look at the legitimacy of some of these teams? Because right now, if you look at the Yankees, they're by far the highest in run differential in the AL.
Look, at the 90 odd game point, we're about what? Most teams have played 94,
Mm-hmm.
95, 96 games.
Right.
Once you get to Memorial Day, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
when you get to about 60 games into the season, you start to get a feel for what you got. If it's legit, if it's not, where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are.
Right.
We're beyond that now. We're at the All-Star break. Most teams, like I said, have 66, 67 odd games remaining in the regular season. By now, you know who you are, you
Mm-hmm.
know how you got here, and you know what you need to go further. Now it's up to the general managers. This is where it shifts this
True.
month,
Yeah.
right through August the 3rd at the trade deadline. This is where organizations now, the people in the front office, the scouts, they go hunting for that little known gem that might be on a roster who's unused that they can bring. The Yankees have done it for years, bringing guys like Clay Holmes in from the Pirates and made him a star relief pitcher when nobody knew who Clay Holmes was. So here's where management, scouting. This is where they cut their teeth and they earn their money.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see who can pull off. It's easy to pull off the big deal. If the Tigers are willing to move a Tarek Skubal, even though he's a rental, you're going to have to put up some of your big time prospects,
Absolutely.
sacrifice them
Mm-hmm.
for the immediate good.
Right.
But there are players that have team control contracts that are financially viable for organizations going forward. 4 teams like the Marlins that are still in contention,
Mm-hmm.
but just come off a sweep, being swept at home for the first time,
Yeah, that was tough.
this past weekend by the Cleveland Guardians. Or the team that I did the games in English. I did the English broadcast this past weekend of the Yankees and the Washington Nationals. The Nationals have no bullpen at all. They've blown 27 saves. It's almost amazing to even
Wow.
think about that.
Holy cow.
27 blown saves, and they're not to 100 games yet. Imagine if they would have only, out of those 27,
Right, you win half of
if
those.
Washington
Yeah.
would have actually saved, I don't know, 8, 9 of them, they'd be in first place.
Yes.
They'd be
Wow.
in the National League's Eastern Division. So at this point in the season, all those numbers that you're talking about, they're being weighed, they're being added, subtracted.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, they mean something because this is where the organizations and the front offices are looking at all those numbers you just mentioned
Mm-hmm.
and saying, okay, we've got to target this player, this type of player, bullpen, another bat, maybe somebody to help defensively, somebody coming off the bench, a veteran. They're making all those decisions right now. So, absolutely, what you mentioned, run differential, having to do with strikeouts as per walks with pitching, all of that now is really front and center when teams are fine-tuning their rosters.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now's the time to take a pause, right? Look at where you're at, evaluate kind of where the strengths and weaknesses are of this team, and see where you are from a positioning standpoint, right? You bring up the Marlins, right? I'm a Marlins fan. Obviously, I got the old school cap on, but yeah, we wouldn't probably be talking about the Marlins if they didn't have the June and, a little bit of July that they had, right? I mean, talking about best record in baseball in the month of June, best record for the franchise in a month, right? When you talk about winning percentage. So there's a lot of good that comes from the Marlins. And we have this conversation all the time, right? Where, the Marlins haven't been spenders, right? They're never aggressive in free agency. They didn't do anything in the offseason. It's like, we're going to trust the prospects and we're going to try to develop them. And early on in the season, you're like, okay, well, what are we waiting for, right? Then they bring in a guy like Joe Mack in, about a quarter way into the season, and he's been a stud defensively, right? And that's now an opportunity to actually evaluate what you have, because now here we are. I think we're about 7 games above 500 after we got swept by the Guardians there, which is a tough kind of momentum killer going into the All-Star break. But you're still sitting, 3.5 games, 4 games back out of the division. If you told me the Marlins would be in this position halfway through, I'd be like, holy cow, we're in a great spot, right? But now it's like, to your point, what do the GMs do, right? You have an opportunity to do something here. You have a young core that's playing really well. Sandy's kind of back in full form. Yeri coming off an injury has been good. Max Meyer, all-star, right, has been phenomenal all season. So it's like, holy cow, these guys have the pieces. What is that move you're going to make? And that's the question, I think, as a Marlins fan, I'm curious to see, because historically, we haven't done anything, right? So now we have an opportunity to do something. Are they going to do something? And I think that's a big point.
Interesting, because I covered the Marlins. I cut my teeth doing play-by-play with the great Felo Ramirez back in 2000. I believe it was 2000. It was the Joe Girardi year.
Okay.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember
I do
that.
remember that. Yeah.
When Joe Girardi won the Manager of the Year with the Marlins and got fired that same season, 81 and 81, a tremendous job. I was there. That was my first year transitioning from music radio into sports radio under the tutelage of, as I mentioned, the Hall of Famer, Felo Ramirez. So I've seen the Marlin franchise be sellers at the trade deadline. I can't remember very often. You'd have to go back maybe to the Jim Leland days, the Dave Dombrowski days, when the Marlins were buyers. I mean, big-time buyers, not little pieces here or little pieces there at the trade deadline. That's one of the more interesting teams right now for this year's trade deadline. Do they keep Sandy Alcantara? Do they add to the young core, maybe with a veteran player, that brings some leadership into that clubhouse? Or if in these next 3 weeks they fall back, do they sell and try to compile more young talent, moving forward for Clayton McCullough? So a very pivotal next couple of weeks for teams like the Miami Marlins, the Washington Nationals. I think the Mets are going to be sellers. There are some pieces of fruit that are low-hanging from that Met tree that some of these teams maybe could pick off. So the market is developing, but we're almost there. We're in mid-July. The trade deadline is a little bit later this year. It's August the 3rd. It happens on a Monday, August the 3rd. So a couple of more days and a weekend series to evaluate. But on that particular day, this year, I think the action's going to be hot and heavy.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of these teams that are still in the mix are going to wait till the last minute to decide whether to buy, sell, or stay still.
Absolutely. Now, I'm excited. I think it's been a great first half of the baseball season, and I just think the way things have kind of painted up to this point will paint the picture of a great electric second half of the MLB season. And just not even talking about the trade deadline, right? Whatever happens in this trade deadline, it's going to be active, in my opinion. So it's going to completely shift the dynamic of teams that could be in the mix later on in the second half. So one last question on the MLB. Who's a dark horse that you like going into the second half of the season?
Well, that's a good question. I'll give you surprise teams from each league that I think have staying power to at least make a dent or make an impact on the big boys going forward. I think in the American League, the Chicago White Sox are the biggest surprise in the
Yes.
American League.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've seen them up close and personal. They were in New York for a series. I'll be in Chicago coming up in about 10 days for another 4-game series against the White Sox. They don't know. They're so young and so talented that they don't know that they're not supposed to be any good. Nobody's told them, hey, you're the White Sox. You're supposed to think, So
Yeah.
I think the Medias Blancas, the Chicago White Sox, are the surprise team, and keep your eye on them in the American League. And your Marlins in the National. Listen, I'm a Florida resident, so there's always a little piece in my heart for the Miami Marlins. I have a condo in Pembroke Pines with my
Vamos,
family,
let's
so
go.
and like I said, I cut my teeth, doing Marlins games. So there's always a little piece of me that's always following the Marlins and Otto Lopez, and
Mm-hmm.
all the young talent that is blossoming. Liam Hicks, all the talent that's blossoming with the Miami Marlins this year. I would keep my eye, because McCullough is one heck of a manager.
Mm-hmm.
I would keep my eye on Miami. And if they don't do something themselves, they could be the team that throws some cold water either on Atlanta or Philadelphia, who I think the Phillies are the biggest threat to the Dodgers in the National League, period. But a team like the Marlins could sneak up on Atlanta and or Philadelphia and give them headaches down the line.
I like that. So you're saying put a nice little bet on the Marlins to go win the division.
DraftKings, baby. You go to DraftKings, download it. It's available in all, right here. Okay? It's available in all 50 states right now. Descarga la aplicación. Get that app. It's in Spanish. It's the only one that's completely in Spanish. DraftKings was first. Play
Love that.
responsibly, but absolutely, I would put a little something on the Marlins to get into October baseball, and I do it on DraftKings.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, perfect. So now we're going to talk a little bit of NFL, right? Your Eagles that you cover all year just traded A.J. Brown a few months ago, right? Traded him to the Patriots for, I believe it was a first round and a fifth round pick. First round next year and a fifth round in 2027. And Brown is reuniting with Mike Vrabel, right? There's a lot of kind of controversy about A.J. Brown. Was he happy with Philly? Was he happy with Jalen Hurts and that whole relationship? Before we talk about, I guess, what your thoughts on the trade are, just tell me a little bit about covering A.J. Brown, covering him with the Eagles and that relationship with Jalen Hurts. What was kind of the temperature in the locker room there?
It was an interesting dynamic, to say the least. They're as close as two people can be 1 minute, and they're as far apart as two guys can be the next minute.
Yeah.
There are family ties there. One is godfather to the other's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It goes that deep. They've known each other and been very close since college. But A.J. Brown, the term everybody uses is, when you talk about receivers, especially, is diva.
Yeah, exactly.
The diva wide receiver here, the diva wide. I remember I wasn't working with the team at that time, but I'm a talk show host on WIP in Philadelphia and WFAN in New York, and occasionally on QAM in Miami. And I remember that there was a very unique relationship between Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens back in the day, in the early 2000s. This is very similar to that.
Yeah.
It's got the similarities where they need each other. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown needed each other, but at the same time, the skill set of Jalen Hurts, there's a lot more to Hurts than just flinging the ball down the field to A.J. Brown. He likes to keep the ball a lot, run, convert third downs on his own.
Right.
He wants to get everyone else involved, the Dallas Goederts of the world, the Devonta Smith. You had a super dominant 2 years ago when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. You had Saquon Barkley having a record season.
Right.
And A.J. Brown is a guy that needs the ball. He needs the ball early. He needs a lot of targets. He's high maintenance as a player. And the one thing with Jalen Hurts is that Jalen Hurts is going to spread that ball around, and he's going to use his own personal weapons also. So there came a time, and look, everyone saw it on national TV with, AJ reading a book on the sidelines and all these kind of things that were distractions that were unnecessary for the team. Howie Roseman, who I think is, if not the best general manager in the National Football League, he's got to
Absolutely.
be amongst the two, three
100%.
best.
Mm-hmm.
He recognized that, this relationship has run its course, and for the good of the team, we're going to go in another direction, even if in the immediate, the team takes a step back. Because when you lose a player like A.J. Brown, you're not going to replace him and be better quickly.
Right.
It's going to take time for this new group of receivers. They brought in Wicks, they brought in different guys. It's going to take time to gel. That's why this particular training camp that starts in a couple of weeks is the most important training camp in Nick Sirianni's tenure as the head coach, and it's the most important training camp for Jalen Hurts maturing as a quarterback. And now this is his team.
Right.
This is clearly his team. AJ's gone. It all falls on the shoulders of Jalen Hurts. A huge season for a guy that, listen, I saw the ESPN rankings, didn't even make the top 10
Wow.
in quarterbacks in the National Football League, and has been to 2 Super Bowls in just recent memory,
Right.
and MVP of one of them just a couple of years ago. So just to prove the naysayers wrong, this is a huge year for Jalen Hurts as a player, as a man, as a quarterback. And it is a year of question marks, but hopefully things will end up on the right side of the ledger for the Eagles in whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know if you saw, there was a clip on the Kelsey Brothers podcast where Tom Brady actually was on there. And they asked Brady about that dynamic between, QB and wide receiver relationships. And the first thing Brady says is like, look, you have to understand where the receiver's coming from. That guy is lining up, full sprint down the field, running his routes, and he's expecting the ball to come his way every single time, especially if you're an A.J. Brown wide receiver one, right, on any team, right? Like you said, T.O., the Chad Johnsons of the world, Tyreek Hills of the world, right, Jamar Chases of the world. They want the ball because they are playmakers. They're difference makers. So I think there was a little bit of a mixed reaction with what happened with Philly and A.J. Brown, right, because it was an issue where A.J. Brown was maybe not getting the ball enough, and that's his own personal issues. But when you looked at the offense as a whole last year specifically, right, Jalen Hurts is having games where he's throwing for 125, 150 yards, and A.J. Brown's not getting the ball, right? So he's like, okay, well, am I just not a system fit? Does Jalen not get me the ball? And I think there was a little bit of an identity crisis, I think, at least in my opinion, like as a fan, as to what is this offense, right? How is this offense going to run? Is it going to run through A.J. Brown? Is it going to run through Saquon Barkley? Is it going to run through Jalen Hurts trying to use his legs, right, and extend those plays? And the Eagles were still successful, and I think that's what people don't realize. We had this conversation, right? It was always the Tua and Jalen Hurts conversation, right? That conversation was always going on. Is Tua the better quarterback? Is Jalen Hurts the better quarterback? Right? Both the Bama guys, different types of players, but that was always the convo. And I always said, I don't give a crap if Tua throws for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns and we lose that game. I'd rather the quarterback throw for 150 yards and a touchdown and we win that game. That at the end of the day, a W is a W. And I think people don't realize, obviously, it's sexy and it's fun when your quarterback's lighting up the defense and throwing for a ton of yards, throwing for touchdowns. But if it's not translating to wins, which is what you have to credit Sirianni there, right? The fans are booing when the offense is not doing anything. But at the end of the day, they've been to 2 Super Bowls in the last few years. They're winning a ton of games. They're controlling the division. They're doing what they're supposed to do. And at the end of the day, it's not easy to win in the NFL. And teams are going to try to figure you out. And you might have dominance one year, and it's going to be that much more difficult the next year. You have to credit what Sirianni's been able to do there, where it's kind of been this defense-first approach, letting Jalen Hurts be the quarterback that he's supposed to be, whether that's with his legs, whether that's his arm, but just allowing that team to find a way to win the game, even if it doesn't look good.
Kevin Patullo was the offensive coordinator,
right.
No longer.
Exactly, yeah.
But the dynamic between OC, quarterback, and wide receiver room, specifically Brown, was just not there. They've moved on from Patullo. It's a new system now. So this is a fresh start. But like I said, with Patullo gone and Brown gone, the 3 pieces that just didn't fit last year, the one that's still there is Hurts.
Right.
It's Jalen Hurts. It's his camp. It's his team. It's his approach moving forward. So it's the biggest season of his career in the National Football League.
Absolutely. And then this year, you guys drafted Mekhi Lemon in the first round. All right. So
Yeah.
you find a piece there, at least young wide receiver that can kind of now fit right into the system. What are your thoughts on him? How do you see them integrating him in year one?
I thought it was a brilliant move by Howie on draft night, jumping up. Remember, he was on the phone with the Steelers,
Yep.
who
Oh,
were
that's
about to
right.
draft him.
That's right.
And Howie Roseman jumps
Yep.
ahead of Pittsburgh by one pick to get
Yeah,
Lemon.
Mekhi was on the phone with the Steelers already.
He was on the phone
Yeah.
with the Steelers when the Eagles picked him. He comes from a pro style offense at USC, so I think he will fit in quickly. He will pick up on the tech, the terminology and everything that the Eagles have in their system, which can be complicated. But coming from a system like Southern Cal at USC, I think Lemon will fit perfectly with a Devontae Smith, who now becomes your wide receiver one. And let's see as they go through the battles in camp, who ends up being 2 and 3. They've got more receivers right now than they're going to keep. Okay. So it's going to be a battle for some of those spots, even who can play special teams,
Yes.
who can maybe return kicks. So it's going to be a healthy competition for some of the wide receiver spots. But I do expect when the smoke clears and when everything gets settled and they get that roster ready for opening day against the Washington Commanders, that you'll have Smith on one side, Wicks and Lemon on the other side, and then the veteran Dallas Goedert at tight end. The Eagle offensive line, which is slowly starting to age, especially Lane Johnson on the right side.
True.
Dickerson, who's been injured a lot. Mailata didn't have his best year last year. So the key to get all that to work is for that offensive line, which has been great, especially through the Kelsey years at center, for that line to be as dominant as it has been in years past.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything runs through the offensive line. Being a Dolphin fan, we've dealt with some really bad offensive lines over the course of the years. So I could see how much of a difference it makes, right? When you talk about A.J. Brown going to the Patriots, right? Patriots are coming off going to the Super Bowl. What's the fit with A.J. Brown? That seems to be a better fit for him from a system standpoint, right? Patriots throw the ball. Drake May's coming off a great year last year. I think it's just a perfect situation for both parties, right? When you look at what happened in Philly, what do you think?
Time out. I'm not convinced.
No?
I'm not convinced. I'm not.
Let me hear it.
Drake May was not impressive. Let's face it. In postseason, I get the Patriots got to a Super Bowl, but it wasn't because they didn't get there on the shoulders of Drake May throwing the football.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to see Drake May now with a weapon like Brown. All right. We're going to see, may the real Drake May please stand up, to quote a famous rapper, as you know. I need to see this for real. Yeah. Okay. I'm not convinced that AJ's arrival is going to bring the best out of Drake May. If the targets don't go his way, I know how Brown operates.
Yeah.
If there's double coverage, triple coverage on AJ, and May starts going to the other side looking for other receivers, then Drake May is going to feel something that he's never felt before. And that's a made man type of wide receiver in A.J. Brown complaining about, hey, why, youngster, why aren't you throwing the ball towards me?
Right.
And I need to see Drake May deal with that kind of pressure. Look, he may be able to handle it, and I could be completely wrong, but I need to see it. I'm interested to see the AFC East this year. Miami, nobody expects anything from them. The Jets, nobody expects anything from them. This is, on paper, a Buffalo and New England division.
Right.
But I think the two teams at the bottom might just jump up and bite somebody in the you-know-what on a couple of occasions, being Miami and the Jets against both the Pats and the Bills.
Listen, you're speaking my language. Anytime we can knock the Patriots a little bit and praise the Dolphins, I'm all in for that. I do agree with you, right? I think when you look at how the season went, and you can't take away showing up to a Super Bowl from anybody, right? But you talk about the Patriots, right? I think they ended up with the easiest record or easiest schedule, right, of strength of record or strength of schedule against, right, opposing teams. And you look at the way that they kind of got there, it felt like they weren't the team. And then come Super Bowl, I mean, they got manhandled by a way better Seattle team. Like the film doesn't lie, right? You saw what happened in that Super Bowl. Seattle dominated them all game. And like the true colors, I think, of the Patriots came out. One thing to credit, I think Mike Vrabel's a great coach, right? He was a perfect fit to come in at the right time, and it all worked out in that regard. But
Right.
I do think the Patriots could get exposed this year, right? They're going to have a more difficult schedule.
And is Vrabel distracted by his own issues?
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Need I bring it up?
Yep.
Need I bring up the whole thing with
That's
the
so true.
with Diana Rossini?
Mhm.
So we haven't seen that. That's not going away.
Absolutely not.
That issue is not going to go away. He's going to be pounded and peppered with questions
Oh,
about
my
that,
God.
during training camp and into the season. So
Oh, yeah.
let's see where Vrabel's head is at this season as compared to last year.
For sure. I mean, he's been able to hide, right? So he doesn't have to be sitting in front of press conferences or anything like that. So the start of the season will be full of that. But it's always great to get back to football season, right? We've kind of had this perfect transition of we got baseball going on, we got the World Cup this year, and it's going to lead us basically right into summer or right into football season. So with that, I want to transition to World Cup, right? We got the final 4 teams playing. We got France and Spain playing today, and then England, Argentina. What are your thoughts on the World Cup this year, right? We're hosting it here in the United States, Mexico, Canada. What are your thoughts from a fan perspective and just being a broadcaster in sports?
It's been a wonderful event, okay? And I think the intention of getting the sport of football, soccer as it's called in the U.S., getting it the exposure and trying to penetrate the casual fan.
Right.
There is a huge soccer world in the United States. Soccer moms, soccer kids,
Right.
college soccer is huge. The only place where soccer hasn't penetrated is really MLS has kind of hit. They have a level, okay? They need to continue to grow, but it's still very far away from the leagues in Mexico or in Europe or in Sudamerica. The event has been wonderful. The crowds have been great. The TV ratings through the roof. There's everything positive. The final 4 teams, first time in I don't know how many years that the 4 top ranked teams are competing against each other.
Right.
I thought, it was the most disappointing performance of all of them was Team United States on the night that they got eliminated.
Right.
They it's almost like they didn't show up to play.
Absolutely not.
But even with having said that, I think the American fever and desire for more football, for more soccer, has grown. So, the basic intention from FIFA to grow this game in North America, the combination of Canada, Mexico, and the United States, it's been an overwhelming success. I expect the World Cup to come back to North America sooner than later. We have the infrastructure, we have the stadiums, we have everything in place to do it like just about nobody else can around the world. At the same time, when this final is over on Sunday the 19th and a winner is crowned and they have a parade and a celebration in a foreign country, by the time we start talking about training camp and who maybe, had a cramp or a pulled muscle at the end of July in NFL training camps, my question is, how much of the World Cup will we even remember when football and and who's the top 5 collegiate team?
Right,
and
exactly.
When football takes over our lives again in August and September and going forward, how much of the wonderful time we had in June and July with the World Cup, how much of that will linger in our minds? That's the question.
Absolutely. I think you talk about the casual fan, right? The casual fan is the American football fan, right? And when football's on, reality is nothing else matters to anybody, right?
Nothing else.
And that's just kind of the dynamic of it. But I think, one thing about what's interesting to me about the United States, right, is the melting pot that the United States is, right? You have so much influence from Europe, from South America, Central America, right, all over the globe. where they are big soccer fans and they bring that fanhood into the United States. I think if we focus too much on the people that are already here, yes, they're accustomed to being American football fans. But when we talk about the people that are coming into the U.S., right, younger demographic, people that are Latinos, Latinas, Europeans, that people that actually already love soccer, if they can bring that kind of culture into us as fans, then maybe we can kind of have like that happy medium where we're getting a little bit of both American football, soccer, and everything else in between, right? Big three is basketball, baseball, and football. But there's already trends showing that soccer is just starting to climb that leaderboard. And in my opinion, I wouldn't be shocked if soccer's number 2 in the next 10, 15 years as part of viewership, just because of the people that are going to come and end up living here in the United States. The trends don't lie.
The game is growing around the world. We saw how well the African countries participated in this tournament. So it's progressing in different parts of the world where we need to see soccer get really competitive is here.
Yes.
The American sports fan will only love soccer if there's something to cling on. Team USA, MLS, having Messi play for Inter Miami is huge.
Massive, yeah.
It reminds me when I was, a much younger man of when Pelé was here with the North American Soccer League and the New York Cosmos. They were getting 78,000 fans at Giant Stadium for every match, but it didn't spread to the rest of the country. So MLS is the key to getting soccer here more popular, and then the national team has got to represent in a stronger manner in international competition, friendlies, whatever, tournaments going forward. The American sports fan wants a winner. That's why they love the Yankees. That's why they love the Celtics. That's why they love I was going to say the Cowboys. They haven't won anything in a long time. But you know what I mean. America loves a winner, so we need for Team USA to be much more competitive going forward so that the American sports fan can lean on a winner, because that's what you need to succeed in the U.S.
Yeah, I think that's what's unfortunate with the way that last game went for Team USA was you had an opportunity to prove something, and it was the opposite, right? It feels like we're on this hamster wheel with Team USA, right? Where we made it to this round of 16 a couple of times. I know they had to play an extra round because there was more teams this year, right? So they looked the part up to that point. The momentum was behind the team. Everybody was like, holy cow, this might be the best Team USA team we've ever seen. And they were doing their part to sell it. But when the opportunity came to really bring the people in, you make it to the final 8, you beat a top 10 team in Belgium, right? That hadn't really looked great up to that point. But at the end of the day, they're still a national or global powerhouse, right? That was a team and an opportunity that you came. And it stunk, right? Because you look at the game first 5 minutes and you're like, oh my God, if this is how it's going to go, this team has no chance. And that was the full 90-minute picture. That team got dominated the whole game. Pulisic, unfortunately, apparently was hurt. Definitely did not look the part of the superstar. And then you have everything kind of leading into it, right? Bowling in, getting his red card. So he was able to play. And then it was like, oh my God, we really got to put this on, because we became like the global enemy. It was like, oh my God, these guys are pulling strings over there to get their best player to play. And you can make the argument that should have never been a red card to begin with. But still, that was the opportunity at hand. And it's unfortunate what Team USA did, to prove their point. And I think that's the most frustrating part about all of that.
I agree with you. Having the involvement come from, even the president of the United States getting involved, it left a bad taste in the mouth of the soccer world.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whether he deserved the red card or not, which is a whole nother debate.
Absolutely. All right. So before we wrap it up, I want to ask you one quick question. Being a broadcaster now for your career, being able to cover the Eagles, who have won Super Bowls, being able to cover the Yankees, what's been your favorite maybe moment in sports to be able to call?
Oh, well, you can go on YouTube and pull some of my calls.
I've seen them.
But for me personally, baseball wise, Aaron Judge's 62nd home run when he tied, Roger Maris, Babe Ruth 60, 61, 62. That pursuit that Judge had of being the Yankee season leader, the American League season leader. You know, remember there's an asterisk about some of the home run records in Major League Baseball, Bonds and
Right.
McGuire.
Of course.
But this was as pure as you can get. 62, Aaron Judge, right down to the wire in Arlington. So being able to call those home runs where he's putting his name next to Babe Ruth, Roger Maris, and them standing alone at 62, that was wonderful at the end of, was it 20, I guess the 22 season with Aaron Judge. And obviously with the Eagles had never won a Super Bowl. And I saw grown men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s in tears, crying
Yeah.
in just pure joy when the Philadelphia Eagles finally delivered a Super Bowl at the parade. The ownership has been wonderful. I've got, I don't have them with me here, but I've got all 3 rings,
Wow.
the
That's
2
awesome.
Super Bowl winners and the NFC Championship jewelry, and just to see the out and out joy of Eagle fans, but especially that first one. The second one, fine, everybody enjoyed, but people thought that first one would never happen. And it was in Minnesota. It was against Brady and the Patriots. A last-minute Hail Mary from Brady to Gronkowski right there under my broadcast booth. And when I saw that ball land on the ground and Bill Belichick go out to shake the hand of Doug Peterson, and you knew that game was over.
Yeah.
It was a joy. It was a call that came out of me very organically, very naturally, that I'll never forget. People remind me of that and the double doink, the no señor, no señor on the missed kick in Chicago. So I'd rank those right there, top 3. Judge, no señor, the Super Bowl with the Eagles.
That's amazing. What a cool experience, right? Like to be able to pursue not only what you're passionate about from like a fan perspective, but what also you're good at, right? Like to be able to have that voice and have that energy and that charisma, and not only that, representing the Latinos that are here that are sports fans, right? Being able to kind of feel the culture in a sport that has been very Americanized over the years. So being able to be that bridge has got to be amazing.
Being the bridge, that's the key word. I've taken pride over my music career. And now in sports, I'm bilingual. I'm a switch hitter. They say switch hitter. I'm a switch speaker. I do both. And being that bridge for years has been my thing. And God has blessed me with the ability to do that. There's only one thing that makes it better, my friend. And that is when you put a little something on it.
Absolutely.
And you do it with DraftKings.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
You got to get the DraftKings app, available now in all 50 states. Está en español. So you can bet in English, you can bet in Spanish. All the numbers are there for all the baseball, the World Cup, the football. When the NBA comes back, it'll all be there. They've got it all. They have it in English. They have it in Spanish. You can turn $5 into 200. Get the DraftKings app in Espanol or in English. Just play responsibly. That's all we ask. Play responsibly. Enjoy. But, échale sazón, a little flavor to your sports with DraftKings.
I love it. I love it. El Sazón is with DraftKings, and we are ready for the second half of baseball. We're ready for football season, and we're ready for this finale of the World Cup to kind of wrap up summer over here in the States. Rickie, it has been a pleasure being able to talk to you. I hope we could do this again. Maybe we do something again around before football season. Pero un placer. Thank you so much, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Muchísimas gracias. Tranquilo y tropical.
Always. All right, guys. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.